So a new thing in our house right now is my 9-year-old. He has these Invisaligns, and it's becoming a trend where we're starting to see these Invisaligns all over the house. He's not keeping them in his mouth, and not only is he not keeping them in his mouth, he's chewing on them. So I feel like we have a Matthew Tkachuk living in our house at the moment. And
Yeah. I'm actually shocked you can find it if they're invisible, too.
Yeah.
They're not really living up to their name the best.
Right. But it is the grossest thing, and it's starting to get expensive because he's chewing through all of his Invisaligns, and it's driving me nuts.
Yeah, I think that would be very, very frustrating. The good thing about that is he's not dropping them on an ice rink where people are playing and picking it back up and putting it in his mouth, which is what Matthew Tkachuk did the other day. I don't know if you saw that, but when Chris Kreider tossed that mouthpiece, it actually didn't go off the ice.
Oh, I missed that.
It landed on there, and Matthew Tkachuk, being the animal that he is, was very proud of putting it right back in his mouth and using it for the remainder of the game.
Oh.
So hopefully Stone's not doing that. But yeah, that's I feel for you.
Hey everybody, I'm Scott Schwartley,
And I'm Dale Dameron.
and we are mental performance coaches at GritBase. And at GritBase, we create customized mental performance strategies to help hockey players just like you become more confident, calm, and mentally tough so they can succeed on and off the ice. And we're also the host of this podcast, Hockey Combat Mindset. In fact, this is episode number 1, so thanks for joining us. Now, this podcast, why does it exist? Well, it exists to help you win the war in your mind so you can become a stronger and more capable hockey player. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
And we are definitely glad that you are joining us here today on episode 1. Super excited to bring our topic of mastering mental toughness, strategies for overcoming stress in big games. And what a better time to go over stress in big games than right now in the conference final of the Stanley Cup playoffs. We have the top 4 teams battling it out night in and night out for that last 2 spots in the Stanley Cup playoffs. These players are overcoming stress in big games every single night, and it is amazing to see how they handle the pressures on the ice and off the ice that we're not seeing and still be the best versions of themselves in the games that we see. However, we're not all playing in big games in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We may have big games to us that on the grand scale may not be big to others, but we need to learn how to overcome that stress just for ourselves.
Yeah, I'm super pumped about this episode because specifically we're going to unpack for you guys 6 strategies to overcome stress. And so these 6 strategies, they're tested, they're proven, ultimately they work. So we're really excited to share those with you. And we're going to do this on the other side.
All right. Thank you for joining us again. Welcome back from the break. Your mental stress that you might deal with during a game does not have to be that you're a member of the Florida Panthers, or you don't have to be Jake Ottinger tonight wondering if you can stop 5 goals from the Edmonton Oilers, right?
Yeah.
Your mental stress, your big game could be that it could be a national championship game. It could be a state championship game. Could be your first game of the season.
Oh, yeah.
The mental stress coming up for a lot of other people that you want to think about too is we have some rookies that are going to be trying to get drafted. Think about the mental stress of the combine and just getting the tests and all that done, right? However, like I said, your big stress could be your first game or first game doing something different.
Oh, and I've got a perfect example of this one. So I know historically I've always played in the position of being a forward, so whether that's a left wing or right wing, center even. But about a year and a half ago, Dale and I actually played on the same team. Actually, due to your encouragement, Dale, I decided to switch to defense, and that was was a radical change for me because it felt like a completely different game. Everything about that role is almost opposite of playing forward.
Did you feel like you forgot how to play hockey?
Kind of. I did. In fact, I think if you remember my first game playing defense, I think my first shift on the ice, I just made a huge blunder where I almost put the puck in on our own net. But anyway,
it was almost, if I do remember correctly, it was almost like your brain just shut off.
It did,
which is actually very normal to handling stress.
Yes.
Right? It's a fight or flight symptom there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was such a wretched experience. But even something so minute as a beer league hockey game, it did carry its own stress for me personally, just like it does whether you're an amateur player or an elite or professional player. But obviously, it's a very common thing to experience something like stress. I mean, obviously, we're talking right now about the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, the stress levels at that level of play are just insane. But the good news and the reason why we're here today is obviously we are mental performance coaches. This is what we do for a living. There are strategies, there are solutions, there are techniques to work around managing mental stress, really with any sport, but specifically for our conversation today within the realm of hockey.
For sure. And so the first point we're going to talk about here, when you're in that first game, right? You're in that first period. You're on edge.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And not just on the edges of your blades. You're on edge mentally.
Yeah, I was holding my stick too tight.
Yeah, you're thinking way too much. When you played forward, you probably got to a point where you maybe weren't thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing that you did, I believe, is you kind of embraced love.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing we have not mentioned before is I'm actually a mentee of Dr. Saul Miller. He is a famous mental performance coach, performance and sports psychologist for the NHL and other sports as well. He wrote a fantastic book, highly recommend it, by the way. It's called Hockey Tough. But he's really encouraged me, and you'll see this in his curriculum, but he's a huge advocate for embracing love as your thought program. And so the more you can get into this mental state of reimagining why you got into this game that we love so much, if you can get back into that mindset of why you love hockey, that is actually a really powerful driving force. It's what's going to enhance your level of positivity, your enthusiasm. It's going to increase your desire to succeed. It's really going to, again, create those warm fuzzies of, again, why you love hockey so much. And if you can kind of dial back into those roots, there's amazing value that can be found there.
I would say that players that use love as their thought program are going to be ones that probably take a little bit more risks. They're a little bit more bold.
Oh, absolutely.
One thing you could probably attribute that to is maybe take it back to your position as a forward. What would you find love with as a forward? It would be creativity. It would be scoring, obviously, creating scoring chances. We all know that feeling of putting the puck in the back of the net, beating the goalie, beating the defense. So a little bit of changing your mindset is, where did you find the love as defense? Well, maybe you found the love more as breaking plays up, right? Breaking passes up, putting the pressure on those forwards, on that winger as they're trying to come in. And honestly, what better way than to feel good as a defenseman than protecting your goalie, right?
Oh, yeah.
Protecting that crease. It goes a lot further. So as far as finding love, I think you could go a little bit deeper, and you have to find what your specific love is, right? And it might be based on what you're doing.
Oh, yeah. I know for like defense, I'm obviously taking pride in blocking shots. For those that are familiar with defense, obviously it's one of the more technical positions. And so I've really amped up my skating, during the season and even the off season. And so it puts a smile on my face to even outskate my competitors. And those are sort of, as you mentioned, those unique things, those unique attributes or components of my game that bring joy to my face. And it's funny because we're obviously talking about the Stanley Cup playoffs. I remember going to a Preds game. Something we have not mentioned here is we're actually based in Nashville, Tennessee, so we're huge Preds fans. But I remember going to one of the Canucks Preds games, and there was some sort of brawl or conflict on the ice, and I could just see this huge grin on Philip Forsberg. And like, you just knew he was having a good time. And then obviously look at his results. I mean, the guy scores goals. This guy loves the game of hockey, and you can see it every single night.
For sure. And I think also on top of that too, to use some specifics from real time lately, We talked about the Florida Panthers. I feel like that's a team, both them and the Rangers. I feel like they're just enjoying where they are at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Up until like maybe the last 2 games, the Rangers have had like almost like a miracle run. They just seem to have the bounces going their way. They seem to just be enjoying life, really.
Oh, yeah. They seem unstoppable.
Exactly. And when you feel that way and you have that love driving you, your team's going to go further because you're going to go further and everyone's just bought in.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So moving on from embracing love, we also want to talk about, you want to kind of develop an infinite mindset. You want to expand upon that a little bit more?
Yeah. So one of the books that really changed my life years ago, I'm a huge fan. This is Simon Sinek, and he wrote a book called Start With Why, How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Take Action. And you'll hear a lot today. You'll see it on your TikTok feeds, your Instagram feeds, YouTube even, where people are like, oh, you need to know your why. And what's the why behind why you do what you do? And that's really that whole language or that approach or that concept really goes back to the work of Simon Sinek. So in that same spirit, he also wrote another book, which is about having an infinite mindset. So in other words, kind of to sort of headline it for you, it's really approaching life as something that is never ending, that there are no limits, there are no ceilings, there are no boundaries, that it's the whole idea of sort of honoring and respecting the journey and whatever that journey may be, that, again, there isn't a finish line. So as you think about your own game, your own hockey style, that every day is an opportunity to get better. It's to, I believe it's James Clear with Atomic Habits. It's improving that 1% every single day. So if you can approach life, if you can approach this sport with an infinite mindset, and just allow things to kind of stack on themselves, that's going to be something that can really propel your game and your mindset moving forward.
I think from a fan perspective, we sometimes look at athletes and when they face a big loss, when the team gets eliminated from the playoffs, some fans they take issue with players that don't seem to really quote unquote care, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a lack of emotion sometimes. Yeah, they're upset. They'll say they're upset, but their body language just kind of speaks to like maybe it's just over, right? And I think that's where this comes into play, is that these players that have this infinite mindset, they have a sense of purpose that goes beyond just winning the championship. Obviously, that is the main goal, but they know that there's going to be another season next year, right? They know that their career, their playing keeps going. Like, there's a joke about players when they get eliminated, they go to the golf course, right? Yes, maybe they get a little bit of break, a little bit of vacation, but their training never stops.
Yeah.
Their eating never stops, right? They have to eat healthy. They have to train all year round. This is not hey, we're going to turn our hockey minds on in September and we'll shut them off in whether it's April or June, right? So these players with this infinite mindset, they take pride in their game. They take pride in their hockey club. It's more than a game. And that's what you want to reach as a player, no matter what level you're at, is it's more than a game, right? It's about your development. It's about your play style. It's about being there for the team, listening to your coach, helping coach your fellow teammates. It's just all about that bigger picture. And so that way you don't get bogged down in, oh my gosh, what are we going to do when we lose game 7 in double overtime, right? We're never going to bounce back from that.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of a cousin of an infinite mindset is really just being in that present moment, that you can wash away what happened in your last shift, your last game, last week, and just focus on the here and now. And when Jay Woodcroft was with the Edmonton Oilers, one of the things I loved hearing him say is that they just don't go to hindsight. They don't look to the past. They're all about the present moment. And it's about being dialed into the right here, the right now, and knowing that, again, everything, there's always a tomorrow, right? And you can focus and channel your energy in that sort of way.
Big time. So 2 important points so far. Point number 3, we want to get into stop worrying about others. This one's extremely hard for me. I'm a big worrier in life, whether that be in hockey or just in things in general. So it's really hard in today's world with social media, with people having the access to keyboards and putting their thoughts everywhere for right or for wrong at any time. A lot of times people don't think about things before they post them online, right? Or before they say them. It's an unfortunate truth about today's world. However, you want to kind of try to shift this focus from these external noise, right? And you want to push it to your internal fulfillment. So negative term, external judgments, positive term, internal fulfillment, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to recognize that your performance is ultimately about you, your journey in the game. It's not about what your coach thinks of you. Yeah, you want to impress. You want your coach to have a high thought of you. But you're not going to win your coach over by worrying about what he thinks about you. You're going to win him over by being you and being true to yourself in your game.
Yeah, and focusing on the things that you can control and focusing on where you can add value. One of the people that I love, again, kind of in that realm of Simon Sinek, is the late Jim Rohn. And I'm kind of just paraphrasing this quote, or maybe I'm quoting it exactly here, but there's this great quote where he talks about if you focus on your career, you're going to make a living, but if you focus on yourself, you're going to make a fortune. So I'll repeat that. If you focus on your career, you will make a living, but if you focus on yourself, you'll make a fortune. And there's so much truth in this statement, because at the end of the day, you bring yourself into every situation, right? So whether it's the workplace, whether it's your hockey club, whether it's your family, when you pull into the garage every single day, you bring you into every scenario. So the healthier you are as a person, the more value you can add to the team or the family or the organization that you're a part of. And it's the classic, airplane thing where, if the cabin loses pressure, obviously put the oxygen mask on yourself first, and then put it on the person next to you or the kid that may be traveling with you. You got to take care of yourself. And I know it sounds like a very sort of selfish notion, but it's intended to be that way. You have to take care of yourself and stop putting so much energy or priority or importance on others, because that doesn't matter. What matters is, how are you? What's your game like? What's your mental health like, so you can perform at your fullest potential?
I'm really glad you mentioned the airplane scenario, because I was going to definitely go there as well, because that was the first thing that popped in my mind is you cannot help someone until you have enough oxygen running through your body, right?
Yeah.
You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anyone else. External pressures are not going to go away. They're always going to be there. In order to kind of achieve this full mastery during big game scenarios, you have to manage them. You have to manage the external, turn them into your internal fulfillment, like we talked about. That's how you will defeat it. You can't worry about that fan in the second row. You can't worry about your coach who's sitting right behind you.
Mm-hmm.
You can't worry about your line mates who you missed the pass to, right? All you got to focus on is the next pass that you'll make to them.
Yeah, definitely. And that is a great transition into our next point where, well, how do you get better? How do you get better at managing yourself? And a big part of that just comes from the art and kind of the science, really, of self-reflection and knowing how to kind of process your mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and self-correct where you can. So yeah, we'll just spend a few minutes here real quick and actually talk about self-reflection and the value that comes from kind of looking internally at yourself so you can perform at your best.
So self-reflection, it's all about enhancing your focus, developing a better understanding of your biggest weapon, which is
you.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're your own biggest weapon, right, how can you maximize that each and every game? Well, just like you would want to sharpen a sword, you want to sharpen your mental toughness after each game that you play. And every game is going to be different. No matter how much you try to get your game to a specific level or consistency, you're always going to be different no matter what. So after you have your game, take a step back, analyze your performance, your decisions, actions that you did during it. And you might want to ask yourself 4 questions. The first question being, what did I do well during the game? Scott, do you think it's important to start with this one first, because you're kind of really focusing on the positive, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to Dr. Saul Miller, one thing that he really, again, encourages is to obviously stay in this positive mindset. And so for Saul, usually it's as simple as when you're done with a game, if you want to self-reflect, note 2 things you did well and note one thing that can use improvement. And keep in mind there how I worded that. It's two things you did well, and then one thing that could use some improvement. I'm not saying one thing that you did horribly, or one thing that you did bad, or one thing that made you an awful hockey player. Like, you don't want to go to that negative headspace. That's not going to do yourself or your team any favor. So, again, at its most basic level, what are two things you did well? What's one thing that could use some improvement? To put it,
if I could step in here real quick.
Yeah.
When you say one thing you could do that could use improvement, we're not saying you're focusing on that one terrible turnover, right, that you made in the game that led to a goal, right?
Yeah.
That's too specific. That's too, like, I mean, you're focusing on the negative at that point.
Yes.
We're talking about a attribute of your game that you would want to, hey, next time I step out on the ice, it's not about one decision. It's about one trend that I want to improve on. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, maybe it's just, you're not skating as hard as you can on every shift. So you're making that note that, hey, that requires improvement. I need to, instead of giving 92% every time I'm out there, you're going to give 110 or 100%. So yeah, it's just those little subtle changes in mindset that make a big deal.
So on top of that, I think that kind of goes into the second question, right? Where did I make mistakes, and how can I avoid them in the future?
Mm-hmm.
On number 3, how did my mindset affect my performance? This is huge, right? Because you want to kind of focus on, how to play the game. You've trained your whole life to play the game, or you trained for a very long time, depending on what skill level you're at, right? But how did your mindset affect your performance? Did you go into the game thinking you were going to win? Did you go in the game thinking you're going to score, or that you were going to have a positive goal differential before you came out? If you're a goalie, maybe you went in with the mindset that you were going to let in less than 2 goals against, or have a save percentage above 900. Whatever that mindset may be, did you let it affect your game? Did you focus on it too much, or did you let it kind of be a driving force that could help you be the best player that you could be? Is there anything else that you would add to that?
Yeah, I know there's that great quote by Sun Tzu. In fact, I think we were just dialoguing about it the other day about how, Dale, you may even know it better than I do, but it's the whole idea of that when you think about war and the concept of war, and people who have the healthy mindset that warriors go in knowing that they already won the war, and then they sort of enter the war, where the ones that typically get defeated enter the war and they seek to win. I know I'm really sort of butchering that as I'm trying to paraphrase it, but
trying to find it real quick.
But typically, yes, warriors that win a war, they already go in with the mindset that, hey, this war is won. Now I'm going to show up for it. Where those that typically lose that war again, they sort of show up at the war, and then they have this desire to seek and win, when it's kind of too little too late at that point.
So I've got the quote here.
Awesome.
Sun Tzu from The Art of War: victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win.
Beautiful.
So, like you said, right? Victorious warriors, they've won the war in their head, right?
Mm-hmm.
They know they're a winner. That's when they decide they're going to go to war. Kind of like you go in when you put all your chips in when you know you've got the advantage, and you only have that advantage when you're mentally sound.
Mm-hmm.
Defeated warriors, they're quick to judge, right? They're quick to act. They're going to go to war. They're going to maybe push all their chips in when they don't have the best hand, but they're going to seek to win no matter what, right? They're going to try to call the bluff. They're going to try to win that one time that they can. But yeah, as we see in numerous times throughout history, whether it be sports or not, victorious warriors win that mental battle first, and then decide that's when we're going to go to war.
Yeah, and that's it really just embodies that number 3 question that we're talking about is, again, how did my mindset affect my performance? There's a big difference between having sort of that first example there as compared to the second one, that you do have to have this winning mindset that, and that stems back to topics that we're not going to even cover in this episode, but we'll cover at some point in the future. But that, that goes back to some basic principles of confidence, and more importantly, just having self-belief, that those are powerful factors in regards to having a healthy mindset. But again, we'll save that conversation for another day.
So the questions that we said were, what did I do well during the game? Second one was, where did I make mistakes? How can I avoid them in the future, right? So that kind of goes hand in hand with what we talked about, the two positives and the one improvement.
Mm-hmm.
3 we just talked about was the mindset. How did it affect my performance?
Mm-hmm.
The last question of the 4 that you'd want to ask yourself after each game is, did I maintain focus throughout the game? Were there moments of distraction? I would almost always say yes.
Yeah.
If you're saying there's no moments of distraction, you're probably lying to yourself. I might be wrong on that. But how did you maintain that focus? Was it a quick distraction and you got rid of it? In one of my previous careers, I used to teach driving courses. And one of the things we'd always talk about driving courses is that, what are you doing when you're driving? Your eyes are constantly moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to check your mirrors. You want to look ahead. You want to see where all the cars are around you. We talked about, when we were teaching the driver how to be a defensive driver, you're going to see a billboard ad. You're going to see those cows from Chick-fil-A trying to tell you to eat more chicken, right? But we always talked about that was focuses that you did not want to be prolonged focuses. You focused on them for a second and then you moved on.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't think about the ad. You didn't think about how hungry you were or anything like that. You had to go right back to looking at the mirrors. So I think that's true in a game too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So you're gonna be playing and you're gonna see something that's gonna distract you. You're gonna hear something that's gonna distract you. Maybe one of the other players say something while they're passing by the bench, and it really rubs you the wrong way. Are you gonna let it affect you on the next play, or are you gonna go out there and maintain your focus on the mindset you set for yourself ahead of time?
Yeah, exactly. And not only you're going to have just the distractions that happen in that moment, but even going to the rink, there may be disruptions or distractions that just exist in your life already. Maybe you got in a fight with your spouse before arriving at the rink. Maybe your coach yelled at you before you stepped on the ice. There are going to be plenty of things sort of vying for your attention, and you have to do your due diligence and be intentional about where you're going to channel your energy and where you're going to channel your focus, and hopefully do it in a healthy and in a right way. So as we wrap up here with this, I believe this is our 4th point so far about practicing self-reflection. It really goes back to getting in the habit, getting in the process that once you are done with your game, that you should allocate time, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. You could do this digitally, you could do this analog through a journal, but actually take the time to sit down and reflect. Again, go through these 4 questions. You can add to them, you can delete from them, but again, think about these 4 questions. What did you do well during the game? Where did you make mistakes? How can you avoid them in the future? What was your mindset like? And then as we just wrapped up here, did you actually maintain focus? Were there distractions? If there were distractions, what were those distractions, and how can you minimize those or better manage them moving forward?
I love that. So that last point we talked about with minimizing distractions actually carries very well into our 5th point. You want to utilize your self-awareness to manage the chaos. If you've watched the sport of hockey, I'd say almost more than any other sport out there, there is chaos everywhere. It's actually what makes the sport beautiful in its own way.
Oh, yeah.
I was talking with a friend years ago when we were watching a soccer game. When a soccer ball hits the post, you know where it's going. It's probably not going in.
Yeah.
It will sometimes, but it's a round ball hitting a round post. It's going to go back out.
Yeah.
The ball itself is actually bigger than the post. So I don't want to get into physics, but we know what's going to happen. When a hockey puck hits a crossbar or a post, can you predict where it's going to go?
Yeah. No. Yeah.
I mean, it might go bar down. It might go right out. It might shoot to the corner. Might pop right down in front of the goalie. I don't know. There's so many things that could happen, and that's just if it hits the post. We're not talking about the 4 people it bounced off of to get to that post, right? Yeah. You also talk about, like, there are, not counting goalies, there's 10 players actively skating around on the ice at full speed with sticks. There's so much chaos. There's so much potential for distraction. So to an outsider looking in, maybe you're watching hockey for the first time, you're thinking, oh my goodness, how do the people even play this game? But if you actually know the sport, you've played it, you will know that there's beauty in that chaos. And you want to not fear the chaos, but you want to embrace the unpredictability of the game, right? Mistakes will happen. That's okay. It's also a very fast-paced game. So it's going to help you to move on quickly from any mistakes that happen, because you know what? If you made a mistake, you can't dwell on it, because by the time you've dwelled on it, there are 4 other things that have happened in the game since then.
Yeah, it's those things that just what makes me love and hate hockey all at the same time, that it is a game of managing chaos, and mistakes, as you mentioned, they're inevitable. They're gonna happen. So one thing that we would recommend, obviously as mental performance coaches, is that, yeah, those mistakes, they're sort of a given. You are managing chaos. You're not going to ever have a perfect game. You're never going to have a perfect shift. And so what we would suggest is, as you think about the stress that becomes sort of the outcome of this chaos that we're talking about, is to really start thinking about action words that you can utilize to help sort of reset your mindset, to manage that stress better. So what we mean by this is, let's say you get out there, you're on your whatever, your fifth or sixth or seventh shift, whatever it may be, and you made a mistake, right? There's something went wrong. You made a bad call. You made a bad pass. You misread a play. When you go back to the bench, apply an action word to help reset your brain. So an example of this would be, maybe you could use a word like release or reload or reset. I know we're using a lot of R's there. You could do something totally different, but just this simple mental action of saying, you know what, I'm going to hit the reset button and I'm going to go out there and play that next shift even better. That can do wonders for your game.
Another thing too, that, I mean, not to get away from the release, reload words there, but for something like, I was thinking about it after you and I discussed this together. For me, it doesn't even have to be one word, but like just saying something as simple as "it's done," right?
Yeah,
it's done. I can't change it. I feel like those words, saying them out loud, which we'll get into in other podcasts too, right? About being verbal, right? And being very out loud with our thoughts to ourselves. Just saying "it's done" releases it out into the atmosphere, right? You don't have to worry about it anymore. And that's hard. It's really hard to not focus on, I mean, take it away from a game perspective, right? Like, you had a bad day today. Just say it's done. Move on. You got to move on to the next day and trust that, like, you can change it and make it better.
Yeah, it's. I know we chatted about this the other day, but it's really like the power of the spoken word. So Chad Wright, I know, who is a sort of famous YouTuber, former Navy SEAL, but he talks a lot about the power of the spoken word. That when he was going through the Buds program, he had a buddy that was also going through it with him. That friend was just as physically capable, or even stronger in some cases, as Chad often alludes to. But so we all have these, negative thoughts, right? So if you're having this negative shift, it's common to have these negative thoughts. So in the case of his friend that was going through this Buds program to get into the Navy SEALs, he was having negative thoughts. And then one day he just decided to share with Chad, this Navy SEAL, that I don't think I can make it. I don't think I can do it. And literally, I think it was maybe 24 or 48 hours later, he ended up ringing the bell and exited the Buds program. And what Chad Wright talks about when talking about the power of the spoken word is that as soon as he said those words, I don't think I can do it, like, it was okay to think it, but as soon as he said it out loud, it cemented it. It put it out into the universe. It made it more real. And so that's a great example of the power of the spoken word. And it also has its value in this case where, Dale, you're mentioning it's done. You're basically putting out into the universe, like, it's behind me. It's over. Like, you are finalizing it, which is great. There's a power in putting those words out and actually hearing those words out loud. In this case, it works positively. The same thing is true. Like my wife and I, we have this agreement that we're never going to use the word divorce, because again, as soon as you drop that D word in a fight and an argument, you're putting it out there into the universe, and that carries tremendous weight.
Changes the game. Yeah,
it does. And so, just something really to note there as you just think about the power of your own words. So whether it's release, reload, reset, it's done, it's complete, use that to your advantage.
Just do me a favor and make sure our teammates don't give me some weird looks on the bench when they hear me murmuring, "It's done, it's done, it's done," over and over. Just let them know, hey, he's having a moment. He's letting it go, but he's going to be really good on his next shift.
Yeah.
All right. We are down to our last point, and this one I feel like is very hard. Eliminating stress with self-correction. Mainly the first part, eliminating stress, right? That is very tough. You want to reflect, as we've talked about throughout all this, about your performance, understanding your emotional responses. You want to take that time to make the necessary changes, right? These adjustments are the most important because this is where self-correction begins. We all know you're your own worst critic, and in some ways that can be very bad, but in some ways you can use that to really help yourself, right? Because who knows yourself better than you?
Absolutely.
So stress is going to be with everything. Stress is going to come in practice. Stress is going to definitely come in games. We talked about the stress of your first game playing defense, right? So kind of reflecting back on that game again, what did you do to eliminate that stress in the middle of the game? Because you admittedly said by the third period you felt better than you did at the first period, right? You weren't gripping the stick as tight, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I know specifically for that game, it was really going back to, for that moment, it was definitely trying to get back into love as the thought program, right? So it was like, okay, calm down. I'm at the end of the day here, I'm here to have fun. And so I was able to dial that in and find the fun moments, even in my shifts that I was playing poorly. Once I removed myself from that game and got to even reflect more and go through some of the self-awareness and self-reflection and kind of think through my game and what I did well again, and those areas that can use improvement, it allowed me to sort of start the process of self-correction, because this last point here is really, I think, it's the toughest. So I kind of think of these first 5 points as more of like guides, awareness tips, things like that. But really where you need to do the hard work is the self-correction part. So it's like, well, now that you're aware of these tips and strategies and techniques, it's now up to you to actually put in the hard work and be intentional. And I think that's the key word here. Be intentional about applying these techniques to improve your game.
And you kind of said it yourself just now. The thing that helped you the most with that is finding that love, like we talked about, the love for the game. Now, you said you reminded yourself that you're here to have fun. Some people might say we play beer league hockey. That's easier to say than when you're doing it for your job.
Yeah, right.
But I think that's not true. I think that ultimately everyone plays a sport because they love it, especially if you went in to pursue it. You probably obviously had some talent to get you to that level, but you ultimately had love for that sport. Well, and that should be your driving force.
Yeah, and it goes. We were talking about this the other day, but it talks about, again, I'm starting to develop a reputation right now for butchering quotes and and insights.
We
but
can carry that through the whole episode.
Yeah, but Mike Babcock, I mean, he talks a lot about it's all about working harder and working at this and working at that, but at the end of the day, it's not work hockey. It's play hockey. That there's a reason why the word play is there and not work. Yeah. Making it to the NHL, maintaining your job as an NHL player, that's hard work. Like, yes, you got to put in the effort and the time and the diligence, but once you remove all that, you're still playing hockey. That this game is intended to be fun, and the sooner you can get to that mindset, and again, go back to love as your thought program, that is such an incredible force.
So to summarize here, we have visualization exercises that we're doing, right? We can go into that down the line. We can go into some breathing techniques that we have. Words of affirmation is a huge thing. And then power statements, right?
Yeah.
That's one we can focus on right now. That's something we talked about in this episode. Having that power statement, something like "it's done" or "I'm good at this," right? Something as simple as like a phrase that really carries that weight of that spoken word, like you said, of putting it out into the universe.
Yeah, definitely. That power of the spoken word, and a good place to start. And this is something even Dr. Miller suggests, and something I really buy into. But it's being able to look at yourself every day in the mirror and say, I'm a good hockey player, and say it with confidence, say it with belief, more importantly. And use that as your power statement. And again, we can get into affirmations. We'll save those details. I got plenty to unpack on that front. We'll save that for another episode. But at least at a basic level here, to get into this heart and spirit of self-correction, it's really just acknowledging that work has to be done, off the ice. You need to be thinking through these strategies and these tips and these suggestions. And then if you want to continue to just level up, a good place to start is just making sure you have a positive self-image, right? And that starts by looking at yourself and saying, yeah, I'm a good hockey player.
Awesome. Well, I think that's some great things to go off of. Do you have anything else that you want to kind of dissect on this topic?
No, I think one thing just to mention real quick, just kind of maybe a tease for some future episodes is, when you look at yourself in the mirror and you're saying, hey, I'm a good hockey player, I'm a good player, I'm a good player, understand that confidence, it comes from three things. It comes from previous success, Because if that's the thing that you're trying to chase, maybe you're dialing into this episode, not only learn about mental stress management, but also just how to become more a confident hockey player. Confidence comes from three things, as I mentioned. It comes from previous success. It comes from planning and preparing, which is a lot about the self-correction and actually doing the hard work. And that also comes from having a positive self-image. And that third piece there, that positive self-image, it's you saying to yourself and you, more importantly, believing that you are that good hockey player. So that can really go a long way.
That's great. That is great stuff to leave on there. Well, with that, I think this is a good time to take a break. And when we get back, we can discuss about the future of this podcast and maybe some things that you can look forward to coming in the weeks ahead.
Discover your hockey player type in just 3 minutes. Are you the tenacious bear or perhaps the agile cheetah? Introducing Primal Score, our free assessment to help you unleash your inner beast. It's time to take the limiter off your potential. Claim your edge by taking this fast and free assessment that's designed to help hockey players just like you achieve their full potential. Go to yourprimalscore.com to get your personalized results. Again, that's yourprimalscore.com.
All right. Well, welcome back. So if you've stuck with us through this whole episode, we thank you. We think we've gone over some great points for this first episode. Hopefully you've gotten a lot from it. We definitely want to make sure we just recap for you in case, just to leave you with a, fresh in your mind, because I know we did go over a lot today. So we did go over our 6 points. That first one being a huge one, that you want to really embrace love as your thought program. Make sure you remember the love for the game. Make sure you remember what brought you into this in the first place. And with that love carrying you, it's going to take a lot of external pressure off of you. You want to develop that infinite mindset, right? It's not about this game. It's not about just this season. It's about the big picture. We want to make sure we're long-term focused. We don't want to just, focus on today only. It's all about improving yourself day after day and never being done with that, right? You never want to hit a point where you say, I'm the best at this. I'll never get any better. And then on top of all that, the third point being, stop worrying about others. There is so much external noise going on in today's world that you don't need that. You don't need to bring that to your game. Like Scott mentioned earlier, you don't need to bring that to your family life. There's enough stress to go around in both of those things. So don't let the outside pressures change your focus. Make sure you stay true to yourself and what you're wanting to do.
Yeah, and then we also continued that by talking about just the beauty of practicing self-reflection and embracing your mistakes, and just, again, taking the time and being intentional about allocating space for yourself to really reflect on your game. We talked about doing, focusing on 2 things that you did well, 1 thing that could use improvement. That's a perfect place to start. I think we also offered those 4 different sort of reflection questions that you can think about. So really it's just real strong emphasis again on just reflecting on your performance as a hockey player. Then we also talked about being self-aware, and that hockey is a game of managing chaos and that things are going to happen. And so probably one of the best takeaways from that section is we were talking about action words like release, reload, reset, or even the power of the spoken word by saying it is done or it is complete. Those things will add a ton of value to your game. And then we wrapped up our conversation today talking about eliminating stress with sort of the third self, which is self-correction. That all these things that we're talking about today, they're all great, but if you don't go through the actual hard work and actually go through the intentional process of correcting yourself and making those intentional improvements, then this is kind of all a waste of time. So you have to take these tips and techniques and strategies and actually self-correct, actually do the hard work and get those things done.
Perfect. Well, if you're joining us here on this journey as we get started, you're obviously very interested in improving yourself mentally as an athlete, or maybe just as a person in general. Those two both go hand in hand, so it's very positive. So I think we have some very exciting things planned for all of us as we continue to go forward with this. One of the main things that we want to focus on is it is hard not to, as much as we're telling you to focus on who you are, a lot of people like to focus on who they like to look up to and who they want to be like. And we have so many examples in current NHL, past NHL, of player styles. Everyone's their own animal, right? So you might want to pick and choose what you like from a certain play style. Do you, as a defenseman, do you like what Roman Yossi brings to the ice, or what Cale Makar brings to the ice. As a forward, maybe you like a David Pastrnak kind of style of play, where you're gonna, really be that scoring forward, right? Or maybe you like more of the old school Ryan Getzlaf, kind of like two-way style, where it's like you're gonna be a threat on both ends of the ice, right? So we have some very exciting player profiles where we're going to break down players' histories, their style of play, maybe where they even developed that style of play, what kind of led to that going forward. And on top of that, we're also going to go into some coaches too, right? Look at different types of play, why they coach the way they do, what they're looking for out of their players, what works for them, what hasn't worked for them. And I think you're going to see a lot of similarities between a lot of these players and coaches, to be honest, but we all have our differences, and it'll be exciting to kind of dissect that together.
Yeah, I know. I'm really excited about it. I know we've already started some initial research. I know we've been working behind the scenes here, like on an episode regarding like maybe the mindset of Cale Makar, or even sort of the mental strategies of like a Pete DeBoer, and so forth. So there's a lot of great stuff that we're doing. We're excited to share that with all of you in the days and the weeks ahead. And if you're here to learn about sort of the mental strategies of some of your favorite NHL players, this is really what this podcast is all about. And in addition to that too, we're going to unpack really just popular sort of what I would call just topics related to mental toughness, grit, sports psychology. Again, this is what we do every single day. We coach people like yourself to become better hockey players and to become more confident on the ice. So we'll cover everything from how to handle pressure, specifically how to handle pressure in big game or late game scenarios. We'll talk about mental toughness and strategies for that. We'll talk about grit. We'll talk about ways to have better focus, ways to create more confidence. I mean, the list goes on and on. So if you're looking to just improve your mindset as an athlete and specifically as a hockey player, we've got you covered.
All right. Well, perfect. And hopefully we'll all become better because of it as we go on this journey. It's going to be super exciting, and we'll all be better people, better players, right? And maybe a lot of us will see success as well.
Definitely.
So with that, I believe that's a wrap on today's episode. We want to make sure that you download our Mental Toughness Awareness Guide and learn how to become a more confident and fearless hockey player in your own style. So all you have to do is go to gritbase.com/mental toughness to download your free copy today. We're also very active on Instagram. We would love to stay connected with you. We post daily about mental performance strategies for hockey players. It's very easy to find us, right? You just got to search for GritBase. That's at GritBase Hockey, and follow us on that platform. And I think we're on all the social media platforms as well that you can find us at. So with that, Scott, I think that's it for us today.
Yeah, just a big thank you to everyone for joining us today. We're super pumped about this podcast and really looking forward to bringing you guys some great content here as we push forward.
Perfect. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you all next Tuesday.
You have been listening to the Hockey Combat Mindset Podcast with Scott Schwartley and Dale Damron. New episodes release every Tuesday, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a rating, provide a review, or make a topic recommendation for a future episode. Thanks again for tuning in, and join us next week for another episode.